All right, good afternoon, CPS students and educators. I can barely contain my excitement today because here we are just a few months away from when we made our big announcement of President Barack Obama's new book, A Promised Land. He promised that he would come back and speak to our students, and it is such an honor to welcome him back here today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jackson and Val, and it is wonderful to see all these amazing young students. I know that this has been a challenging year for everybody. I think it's been especially challenging for young people. I just want to say how much I'm looking forward to having a conversation with the students, because I know the book I wrote was a thick, long book. And, I know that with all the other work that you do, for you guys to take some time out to read all of or part of the book, was just an additional piece of business for you guys with all the other stuff that you do. But it's especially gratifying for me because part of the goal of the book is for young people to be able to read it and see that the path I took wasn't all that different from the path that many of you have a chance to take.
I could ask you 100 questions about the book and some of the themes that you lifted up, but we actually have an expert here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Val Warner from Windy City Live to take us through the discussion today. Hey, Val.
Hi, Dr. Jackson, and thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. Expert, I like that. It is always good to see you. Mr. President, it is great to see you again. I have to be honest with you. I've been going to bed and waking up to you every day lately, of course, because I've been reading and listening to your book. Thank goodness my fiance is very secure because I got another man's voice in my bedroom. But I got to ask you, how long did it take you to record 700 pages? I'm just curious.
Probably about 12 days.
No way.
Yeah, well, you do it in 4-hour increments. And I usually was able to get through about 50 pages in 4 hours. So I tell you, you would be tired though at the end of at the end of reading that many words. A bunch of times as I was reading it, I was thinking, man, I need to be more concise. I need to be I need to cut out some of these words so I don't have to read so many.
You need to self-edit a little bit, huh?
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Well, let me just say I am honored to be a part of this incredible event, this discussion. So, again, thank you all both for having me. We're going to be hearing from CPS students shortly, but I wanted to kick off this conversation with this question, Mr. President. You called your book A Promised Land. I'm sure there were lots of titles that went through your head before you settled on that. How did you come up with that, and how did you settle there? And what does A Promised Land mean to you?
Well, look, obviously there's a biblical reference. That story of Exodus obviously has special meaning for the African-American community and the history of slavery and Jim Crow. And that story inspired so many generations to believe that there was something better than the here and now to strive for. And then finally, a promised land speaks to America, which promises that we're all equal and that we're all endowed with certain inalienable rights. But for so long, for so many, and not just the African-American community, but for women and for immigrants and for the LGBTQ community, they've been marginalized. And part of the process of making a more perfect union has been to deliver on this promise of democracy in which all people have dignity and respect.
Like Dr. Jackson, I could go on and ask you a lot of questions about the book, but it is not about me. We've got these brilliant young people here who are standing by waiting to talk to you. So let's move on to the reason we are here today. And of course, that is the student Q&A. We have CPS High School civics students who have read your book. Several of them have identified parts of the book that were meaningful to them. We're going to call upon those students, and then they're going to discuss the excerpt that they chose and pose a question to you, Mr. President. So without further ado, our first question comes from Erica Washington. She is a senior at King College Prep. Erica, it's your turn.
Thank you, Ms. Val, and thank you for your time today, President Obama. So I value all the insight and guidance you'll be providing us with today. So in chapter 12 of your book, you was talking about how no solution, there was no 100% solution to any of the problems you came across during your presidency. And this struck me because I, along with many Americans, struggle with making decisions. And being president, you have to make decisions for many people. So I was wondering, were there any guidance you took in when you were making decisions? And were there any values you didn't stray away from? And how did you deal with knowing that not everyone will like your decisions? Thank you.
That's such a good question. What I struggled with as president was something we all struggle with. Every single day we're making decisions. It starts with values, right? It starts with what's important to you. And I think the biggest challenge for all of us, but maybe especially when you're young, is trying to figure out what are the things that really matter to me. I write about in the book how I decided I had a decision to make when I got out of college. I could have pursued a path that would have made me more money. And that was sort of what a lot of my peer group did. But I had to ask myself, all right, is making money the most important thing to me, or is me figuring out how I can make a contribution to my community more important? And I had to kind of examine and ask myself, what do I really care about? What is it that at the end of the day, I want people to be able to look back and say, oh, that's what Barack was about. And yes, during my presidencies, there were certain values that I wouldn't stray from. I was very clear about anything I did. I had to believe that it was going to be the best thing for the people who voted for me, not the best thing for me. And yes, you have to feel as if part of the reason that I was able to make decisions that weren't popular was because I had taken the time to kind of think to myself, I don't want to be somebody who's just doing something to be popular. And the more decisions you make, and the more you're reflecting on whether or not that was the right thing to do or not, did it work out? Did I feel good about it? Was it consistent with who I believe myself to be? Then I'll make a better decision next time. So you can't be afraid of making decisions. Otherwise, somebody else is going to make a decision for you. And I think that's especially important when you're young. Now's the time for you to make a bunch of decisions, understanding that not every decision you're going to make is going to be perfect. But that's part of the process of learning and understanding who you are and what you care about and how you want to live. Thank you for that great question.
Great question, Erica. Good job. Nice to hear from you. Now it is Ezra's turn. Ezra Pruitt is a senior at Diet High School. Ezra, take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Val and President Obama. I'm wondering about the section in your book when you write about how democracy is not a gift from on high, but rather the work of everyone. This struck me because we as Americans pride ourselves for having a very democratic government. But as many of us have seen over the past year, our democracy has been threatened and challenged. We know that listening to perspectives other than our own is important in a democracy, but listening is not enough. So what more can we do to take action and work towards a truly inclusive democracy?
Look, I think it's a great question, Ezra, and it's one I've been thinking about and struggling with both before I was president, during my presidency, and I'm still struggling with it now. We all saw what happens when kind of our basic democratic conversation breaks down, and you had people rioting at the Capitol and putting people at risk, and so I think it's a reminder that our democracy, like our society, works because we share a common story. We agree that this is how things are going to go. We agree that we're going to have elections, and then we agree that everybody has the right to vote if they're a citizen of the United States. And then we agree that if they're counted, whoever gets the most votes then wins that election. But as you've pointed out in your question, part of what's taken place in America is that in the past, we weren't always true to that story that we told. Right? So Black folks weren't allowed to vote, or for a long time, women weren't allowed to vote, or even white men who didn't own property weren't allowed to vote. And people had to struggle and fight to make sure that we lived up to the story we were telling ourselves about being a democracy. Now you're starting to see African Americans and Latinos and women and LGBTQ people, getting political power or getting economic power or being more represented. Those people who thought, well, you know what, American democracy is just for some people, but not for all people. I think they felt threatened. Part of what's changed in your lifetime, and certainly in mine, is that everybody's getting their information from different places. Now, how do we change that? I think that part of it is encouraging everybody to think about where you're getting information from and not following some of these rabbit holes on YouTube and Facebook. Trying to distinguish between fact and opinion, trying to use our minds to evaluate and analyze where we're getting our information. I think we have to teach that. So I'm glad everybody here is taking civics classes, and understanding how the system's supposed to work. I think part of it is also, though, us spending time with people who are not like ourselves, which, by the way, reminds me, when you go to school, make sure to seek out people who are different than you in various ways. Because that's one of the great things about education. It's not just what's in the book, it's you being exposed to and meeting people with different personalities, different attitudes, different ideas. And you learn from each other in that way. And we have to give each other, we have to create more opportunities for all of us to do that.
Right. And Mr. President, I'm just sneaking in here with a little piggyback on what you were saying. Just listening to that, I'm reminded of something you said on page 15. I noticed how people stood up a little straighter when they learned their voices mattered. So I think that is something that is important for these young people. Maybe you can speak on that a little bit more, that their voices matter collectively.
I think that we've seen just a recent example this past summer after the George Floyd murder.
Yeah.
And you saw protests made up predominantly of young people, but you notice, it was not just African-American young people who were out there.
Right.
You had protest, Black Lives Matter protests in little towns in Oregon or Utah where there are no Black people.
Right.
But you still had kids out there saying, this isn't right. And that indicates to me that I think there's a lot of idealism among young people. When they let that out in an organized fashion, it has power. People stood up, it took notice.
Yep.
And, in a lot of jurisdictions, you're starting to see change. But if all you're doing is complaining or sitting back and feeling cynical about it, then nothing changes.
Right.
So the key for us is to constantly recognize that we're lucky to live in a society, as long as we protect it, in which you can go out there, make your voice heard, organize with people who who share your beliefs, and actually, in a peaceful way, have an impact and change society.
Thank you again so much, Ezra, for that question. Our next question will go to Kaila Risper, a senior at Dunbar, and Elijah Warren. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Val. And thank you, President Obama, for being here today. Now, I would like to transition to the section of your book when you talk about the current pandemic and how it has elevated a thought-provoking point, that unless we learn to cooperate with one another, we will perish. This is paramount to us because the pandemic has impacted all of us in several ways. For example, the pandemic has separated me from a lot of close people that I depended on, such as friends and mentors. Losing these relationships has affected my mental health.
And for me, during this pandemic, I have had great and bad days, but more great days. I've coped through the pandemic with reading and working on my music. The questions Elijah and I have for you are, how has the pandemic affected you? And what can we do as young people to continue to grow bonds of the community as we transition to the next phase of this pandemic, from the rolling out of the vaccines, reopening of schools, and effectively functioning businesses?
Michelle and I have been lucky in so many ways, and because of the fact that we don't have to worry about paying the rent, we don't have to worry about losing a job. We're not a frontline worker. The pressures that were on us during this process are so different than a lot of people. But the thing that I think we went through, that everybody went through, is the fact that you're cut off from people you love. Michelle's mom lives in Chicago, and it was 9 months before we had a chance to see her. And she's safe and doing great, and she just got vaccinated. But Michelle's mom is 86, and that's, you want to spend time with somebody you love who's at that stage in their life. And I think we've felt that in a absence of being able to hug and kiss and be with people you love. I think the other thing that we've been impacted by is just our concern about how things could have been handled better in this whole process. And I feel like it's a reminder that a lot of times we don't think about government until we got problems. And when you've got more than 500,000 people who've died in this country, disproportionately people of color, and you compare, let's say, Canada, where they had about 40% fewer deaths per capita, meaning given, they're a smaller country, but for each person, they managed it in a much better way. And I think that was a frustrating thing, particularly for me, since, I know what government's capable of doing when it's done right. And I think it's a reminder that, of what we were talking about earlier with Ezra's question. We've got to pay attention to this stuff all the time, not just some of the time. We can't just kind of go along in our lives and not participate and not vote and not worry about it, or think that it doesn't matter, this doesn't affect my life, because it does all the time. One benefit was it got me to think about what's important to me, and the amount of time that I think Michelle and I spent with our daughters, just sitting around a dinner table talking, focusing on each other, listening to each other, instead of just going our separate ways and, doing our own thing. I think it really re-emphasized for me, and I think Michelle felt the same way, that ultimately family, friends, community, that's the stuff that makes for a full life. That just having stuff, but the things that bring you joy in life, and the things that you'll remember looking back, really had to do with hanging out, laughing, telling stories, helping others. Those are the things that will actually sustain you and fulfill you.
Mr. President, I'd like to follow up with a question to these young folks. You said, I know how government works when it's done right, particularly talking about the pandemic, right? And I also know we all know someone who says, when they go low, we go high. How hard is it for you, knowing what you know, to always take the high road? Or is it easy?
One of the things I think folks got a sense of probably reading the book is there are times where you're frustrated. There are times where you don't feel like you're being treated fairly.
Right.
There are times where folks are acting a fool. There are times where, you are angry. And I think that it is just fine to feel those things. That's part of life. What I've tried to do, what I try to teach my daughters to do is how do you process those emotions and then channel them in ways that are constructive, right? I think there was a scene in the book, some of you guys may remember, when I was trying to get a big healthcare bill passed, and I was making a speech to the joint session of Congress, and a congressman yelled out, "You lie," to me while I was delivering this speech.
The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Now, keep in mind that kind of disrespectful behavior you never see, had not seen before. And I think I wrote in the book, my initial impulse was to get down from the podium, walk down to that man and smack him in the head. But generally speaking, that would not have set a good example as president of the United States.
Right.
So, so the fact that you feel these things doesn't mean that you have to act on them. Or more importantly, if you're acting on anger and frustration over injustice that you see, you want to be strategic about how can I actually channel this in a way that actually gets something done. And in my case, that was to get the best revenge for me was to get that healthcare bill passed.
Right.
It has ended up giving over 20 million people health insurance who didn't have it before.
Well, I think it's safe to say collectively in this group and here in Chicago, we are all so proud, or we're so proud of you that you contained that South Side and you didn't go down there, because we all know from Chicago that South Side can come up and rear its head, but you're the president of the United States and you held your composure. So you just got to know, here in Chicago, in the Chi, we were all rooting for you and so proud of that dignity that you held the entire time you were in office. So I just had to get that in. And I also want to apologize to Elijah Warren, because I did not say that you are a senior at Whitney Young. Go Dolphins.
Michelle's alma mater, so you can't leave that out.
All right. For this next portion, well, we've gotten through the heavy stuff. It's time to get it a little bit light around here. For this next portion, Simeon Jr. Tamaje Bonds is going to be reading 3 questions from other students. So, Tamaje, are you ready for this section?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good afternoon, President Obama. I hope everything's going okay. We have a couple of questions for you. Our first question is, what was your favorite thing about being president?
My favorite thing about being president is when I got some stuff done that actually helped people, because then, you feel like, all right, this is why I do it. This is the reason for the sacrifice. You get satisfaction from seeing yourself having a positive impact on somebody else's life. But I think a lot of times the question really is like, all right, what are the perks of the office that you enjoyed most? The thing I had the most fun being president, the thing that was most fun about being president, we used to have these music series I write about in the book where we could get anybody to come and perform. And, you got this concert right in front of you, where you got front row seats. We had legends like, Stevie Wonder or Mick Jagger or Smokey Robinson. But yes, we had folks like Beyonce and J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar and they're just right there. And to have sort of a concert like that where you can see just how good these musicians are, and we'd run workshops for young people who were interested in the arts and in music before the concerts. That was a lot of fun. That I have to say was a great privilege, is just being able to see people who are great at what they do, perform their art.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Our next question is, if you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
So in our family, we had a little contest with a bunch of kids and friends of ours about what is the best food. And we decided, based on this unscientific survey, that pizza was the best food. Because the theory is that you could put whatever you like on your pizza.
Oh, okay.
Right? So if you're a vegetarian, you could have vegetables on your pizza. If you wanted to eat some sausage, put that on your pizza. So it was a delivery system for whatever food you wanted. And so I might go with pizza.
I was thinking you would say broccoli or something.
That's just a rumor. Now, what is true is that I eat healthy generally, but if I had to, I'm not sure I'd want to eat broccoli every day now. That'd be kind of a sad life.
Thank you for sharing that. Our final question for today is, what would you say to your teenage self?
The first thing I would say to my teenage self is stop partying so much and do some work. Because I was not as, I think, together and responsible as you and the other young people on this screen. But I think if I were a teenager, I would probably tell myself, try to find a little more balance in terms of the things that will last over the long term. Because it turns out, and I think you guys will discover this, fairly soon. And we tell our daughters this all the time. It's interesting. Malia, who's a senior now, she'll graduate this year from college. We've warned her. We're all like, it turns out when y'all go out every night, it gets old. Even the most fun you can have will get old if that's all you're doing.
Right.
And there comes a point in which you say to yourself, okay, the things that last, that will bring me sustained satisfaction, usually have to do with me developing my skills, me feeling like I have control over my life, me feeling as if I'm learning new things, me feeling as if I'm helping other people, me feeling as if I'm respected, and that comes from me showing respect to other people, right? Those kinds of habits, you're not going to have them all immediately when you're young, but that's the thing that is going to deliver sustained satisfaction.
Well, Tamaje, thank you so much for those rapid fire questions. I want to end with my rapid fire question to you, Mr. President. And that is, of course, you and Mrs. Obama both have best-selling books. Is there a little friendly competition in the Obama household on whose book is going to outdo the others?
No, because I've already waved the white flag. Michelle broke every record on her book. Now, I will point out her book is about half as long as mine, so I think if you are looking for a weekend read, you're not picking up A Promised Land. But I loved her book because I thought it told a story that everybody could relate to, about family and her finding her voice, as a young girl growing up on the south side of Chicago. And
is there anything you learned in her book about her that you didn't know, Mr. President?
That's a great question. One of the great things about a partnership like this is that, you've been through highs and you've been through lows. And, there have been times where she told me just what she thought of me. And I would just bite my tongue because I'm a smart man.
Yes.
But what the degree of mutual respect that you learn over time, I think that's what sustains you through the ups and downs. And that's one thing that I will say to all the young people. You guys are far away from making decisions about life partnerships. But Erica, when you were asking earlier about decisions, the most important decision you'll make is, who is it that you are going to love and be loved by and try to make a life together with. And when you're making that decision, really think about not the superficial stuff, but the stuff that will last. Do you respect them? Do they make you laugh? Are they kind? Are they going to be good parents? Are they trustworthy? Do they have good values? Do they have your back? That's the kind of stuff that I think sometimes we miss, and that's, it turns out, what ends up being most important. That's what'll keep you going.
You didn't even know this, but you just took this old lady through marital counseling. Thank you so much. That was above these young people's head probably. But let me just tell you, as someone who's going to try it again, thank you for that little tidbit of advice to how to get some sustainability, some 30 years under my belt. I think I still have it. I cannot believe this hour flew by the way it did. Time has truly flown by. Our hour is up. Of course, we want to give a special thank you to Dr. Janice Jackson and her team for planning and pulling this together. Dr. Jackson, it was amazing. And of course, a huge thanks to President Obama for spending this time with these kids and sharing your personal stories, of course, with this #1 bestseller, A Promised Land. And dare I say, you come back when Volume 2 comes out and we do this again, guys? What do you think? It's a date?
I will be happy to do that. In the meantime, I want to wish all these young people, all of you guys, good luck. I'm so proud of you and so appreciative that we had a chance to spend a little bit of time together. Maybe we'll get a chance to meet sometimes in the future. And I think my parting words for you is that in the same way that Michelle and I have a story to tell, you guys do too. Now, your story is still at the beginning, and it's still unfolding, but I hope all of you understand that your story is just as precious and sacred and special. You're the author of your own life and your own story, and it has power. So don't sell yourself short.
Well, I want to thank all of you all so much for making my 47th birthday so special just because
happy birthday.
Thank you so much, just because I'm here with you guys. So it's already a special day, but this just made it even more special. So thank you so much. Dr. Jackson, would you like to say anything before we end it?
I'm just happy to be a part of this and so excited that our students got an opportunity to talk to President Obama. And thank you, the folks over at Windy City Live for hosting us today. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you, Val. Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Thank you to the educators who helped, I know, work with the young people who were with me. They seemed like they were outstanding as well. So appreciate you guys all.
We'll see you in a few years, right?
Well, you don't see me before then. I'm going to be in Chicago. We got to get that, the presidential center built, and the foundation's moving on all kinds of stuff. So we'll see you soon.